In the dead of night on the Indian Ocean, a tiny orange dot sways unsteadily amidst the black waves. That is not a life raft, but the lifeboat of the Maersk Alabama, seized by Somali pirates. Inside the cramped, box-like compartment, the air is thick with the smell of oil, sweat, and fear. Captain Richard Phillips has his hands tied, his back pressed against the cold plastic wall. A rusty AK muzzle presses against his temple. Ice cold. With every wave, the boat rocks violently, jerking the gun barrel against his scalp, leaving a burning sting. He knows that just one startle, one slip of a finger on the trigger, and his life ends in this dark chamber. Outside, the night sea is far from peaceful. The waves aren't huge, but enough to make the boat pitch and dive, like a toy dragged behind a giant steel monster. The Navy destroyer USS Bainbridge. A taut tow line connects two fates, the hostage and the rescue force. On the Bainbridge deck, just tens of meters away, three shadows lie flat behind the railing. They wear dark gear, helmets, and light armor. Before them are sniper rifles fitted with scopes and night vision devices. They are SEAL Team 6, men who flew halfway around the world just to arrive in time for this night. Through their scopes, they don't just see a rocking orange boat. They see the three heads of the pirates, small targets, constantly moving, retreating into the cabin, then popping out to argue in wave guns. And amidst those shadows is the pale face of Phillips, drenched in sweat, eyes half closed, unaware that on the big ship, three gun barrels are silently breathing in sync with his every movement. The rules of engagement from Washington are clear. Fire only when the hostage's life is in imminent danger. Do not hit the hostage. Easy to say, but in reality, what does imminent mean? Is it when the gun is pressed to the head, or when the pirate starts to squeeze the trigger? And in that fleeting moment, who is calm enough to assess, order the shot, and make no mistakes? Night winds whip across the freezing deck. Each gust spins the orange boat slightly, changing the angle, obscuring or revealing the pirates' faces. The snipers must constantly adjust and track. They must not only hit, but hit simultaneously. 3 shots, ensuring no pirate has time to pull the trigger on Phillips. Inside the boat, 4 days of holding the hostage have shredded the nerves of both captors and captive. The pirates are disoriented and impatient. No ransom, fuel running low, promises of leaving the Somali coast are now just meaningless shouting. One of them, the youngest, eyes red from lack of sleep, has hands that shake more and more. The more he shakes, the more the gun vibrates, tapping against Phillips's temple like a countdown clock. On the big ship, the commander listens to reports from each team. Range, wind, boat pitch. Has every shooter acquired their target? Above, the sky is pitch black. No flares, no searchlights pointing at the boat to keep the pirates unaware, but providing enough ambient light for the scopes. Below, the black, cold water is an abyss waiting for anyone to fall. A larger than usual wave hits. The lifeboat lurches heavily. The pirate holding the gun to Phillips's head curses, jerking him closer. The AK barrel digging into the hostage's back. That is the very moment where the distance between life and death, between rescue and massacre, is measured by the tremor of a finger on a trigger. Ladies and gentlemen, to understand why everything led to this insane situation, how a relief cargo ship turned into a battlefield between Somali pirates and America's most elite special forces, why 3 shots in that night had to carry 3 lives and the honor of a nation, we must turn back time to a few days ago, when the Maersk Alabama was still just a gentle container ship shadow passing through Somali waters, and pirates were merely small blips on a radar screen. Ladies and gentlemen, a few days before that night filled with the sound of waves and gunfire, the Maersk Alabama was just an ordinary container ship. She carried square containers of blue, red, and white, mostly food aid from the World Food Program, voyaging from Oman to Mombasa, Kenya. On the charts, her course traced a long curve off the coast of Somalia, a stretch of water that every mariner calls the gray zone. It is known as the Somali Pirate Danger Area. Notices pasted in the mess hall, the radio room, and on the ship's bulletin board all warned,
always dangerous here.
increase vigilance when transiting from latitude to latitude. Pirates often use small skiffs, equipped with weapons. But for those who have spent years at sea, these warnings gradually become background noise. Danger is danger, but ships pass through every day. A sailor would shrug. Ironically, the Maersk Alabama was the first US-flagged ship to sail through this area in years, flying a flag that made her a high-value target. Captain Richard Phillips knew very well that the waters ahead were not friendly. Before the voyage, he studied pirate reports, updated security protocols, and forced the entire ship to practice anti-piracy drills. Alarm, lock doors, everyone to the safe room if there's an intruder, the sailors grumbled. The captain always thinks of the worst-case scenario. But that is the habit of a man who has spent decades afloat. Always assume the worst. So if it truly happens, you don't die from surprise. While the Alabama sluggishly pushed forward at over 17 knots, the Somali coast was a different world entirely. A country without a state, war, poverty, foreign vessels sweeping their fish clean, and toxic waste dumping pushed many fishermen to pick up guns. At first, they claimed they were just protecting Somalia's waters, but lucrative ransoms from captured ships gradually turned them into professional pirates. They didn't need big ships or heavy artillery. They only needed a motorized skiff, a hook ladder, a few AK-47 seconds, a shooter who wasn't terrible, and sheer recklessness. Before the bows of ships hundreds of meters long, they were just tiny blips on a radar, until they closed in, hooked their ladders, climbed the deck, and set up a completely different reality. I have an AK. You have empty hands. No matter how big the ship, the owner must listen. On the morning of April 8th, 2009, the sky was clear, the sea calm. On the bridge of the Maersk Alabama, a sailor looked at the radar screen and squinted. Captain, there's a small target speeding up on the port side. Phillips walked over, watching the signal dot moving at an abnormal speed. He raised his binoculars. Amidst the deep blue sea was a small skiff, engine roaring, with vague human figures on board. And as it got closer and closer, with water spraying behind its tail like a long white rope, Phillips knew instantly.
Coming, Chief.
He immediately sounded the high-level alarm. The PA system blared. Pirate attack drill. No, not a drill anymore. Pirate attack. High-powered fire hoses were activated, spraying water like rain down the sides of the ship. The vessel sped up, zigzagging to create wake turbulence, making it hard for the small skiff to approach. On deck, a few sailors fired flares down at the water, hoping to blind the attackers. But on the skiff, 4 skinny Somali youths, only about 15 to 18 years old, clung tight to the gunwales, eyes bloodshot. They had spent hours on the sea hunting. Turning back now meant returning empty-handed, or even losing face with the gang. In their heads, there was only one word: bored. The skiff lunged against the ship's hull, ignoring the fire hoses pounding down like water hammers. A hook ladder was thrown up, latching onto the railing. Even though the container ship was as high as a steel wall, 4 shadows managed to slip through the cascade of water, climbing onto the deck with AKs in hand. Footsteps thundered on the deck, followed by shouting in broken English mixed with Somali. "Captain, money, stop ship." But Phillips did not stop the ship. He knew stopping in these waters would only make them an easier prey. Just moments before, he had ordered the chief engineer, "Get the men down to the engine room. Prepare the citadel." When I give the signal,
We can go this
lock
way.
all
It's much
doors.
easier.
Kill
Do
the
not
power.
lie to me.
Deep in the belly
Where
of the
is the
ship,
crew? Move
a group of
now.
sailors quickly crammed into a sealed area,
Secure.
a makeshift safe room in the engine block, where they could lock from the inside, cut the power, and disable the steering, turning the ship into a soulless corpse in the hands of pirates. On deck, the 4 pirates, led by a thin, tall youth with sharp eyes, Abduwali Muse, began to hunt. They banged on doors, screaming, pointing guns at the locked entrances. Where is crew?
I can't see
Captain,
anything.
show
What's
crew.
happening?
They didn't understand
Find the
why such a
captain,
massive
quickly.
ship was deserted. They needed hostages to demand money. An empty ship is just a useless lump of tin in the middle of the ocean. A game of cat and mouse began. Phillips tried to stall, leading the pirates around in circles, pointing this way and that, always keeping distance between them and the way down
Easy,
to the
we've got
engine
him.
room. Below deck, the chief engineer and his crew silently shut down systems one by one, pulled breakers, and cut the lights.
You think
Suddenly,
I'm stupid?
the ship went black. The main engine slowed. The vessel drifted, no longer responding to the helm. Muse was furious, jamming his gun into Phillips's chest. "You play game? You think I'm stupid?" But at that very moment, in a dark corridor below, a group of sailors had set a trap. They pretended to let one pirate wander down into the engine room. As he squeezed into a narrow passage, a heavy door slammed shut. Burly men lunged out, tackled him, and stripped his weapon. The young leader of the pirates was handcuffed, his leg wound bandaged, becoming a hostage
Can they help
himself.
me with it?
The situation flipped in a flash. From
Get
they
in
have
the boat,
guns,
move
we
now.
have nothing. Now each side held a hostage of the other. On deck, the air was thick with suspicion. Phillips realized this was the only chance to save most of his crew. After hours of tension, a deal was struck. You get on the lifeboat, we give you food, water, and $30,000 from the safe. In exchange, you release us and leave the ship. On the surface, it seemed like a deal where both sides could retreat with honor. The pirates didn't get the ship, but they got cash. The cargo ship lost some cash, but kept the vessel and crew. And Phillips, as the captain, agreed to board the lifeboat with the pirates, thinking this would calm them down and save lives. But the moment he stepped from the ship's deck down into that tiny orange boat, no one suspected that he was stepping into a new gamble. A game where the opponent was no longer confused, Somali youths, but a chain of events that would pull in the US military, SEAL Team 6, and the entire world, watching every ripple of the waves. The Maersk Alabama gradually shrank behind him, becoming just a steel block far on the horizon. Ahead,
This is not enough
the
money.
orange boat carrying 4 young pirates, an American captain,
Shut up and keep
and
counting before I throw it
$30,000
overboard.
began to drift into Somali waters. And from that moment on, everything was no longer in the hands of maritime commerce, but had shifted into the hands of the military and special forces. When the Maersk Alabama gradually faded over the horizon, the story was no longer just about the maritime industry. From the moment that tiny orange lifeboat began drifting toward the Somali coast, the game shifted directly into the hands of the US military. Day 1. The arrival of the USS Bainbridge. The distress signal from the Maersk Alabama was quickly relayed through communication channels. Inside the 5th Fleet's command center, dots on the map moved, and arrow lines appeared. A simple order was issued. Direct the nearest ship to the scene. Keep the hostage alive. Prevent the lifeboat from reaching the shore. The destroyer USS Bainbridge, an Arleigh-Burke-class vessel, gray-hulled, angular like a steel knife, was ordered to proceed at full speed. The ship sliced through the water, radar sweeping constantly, a Seahawk helicopter ready on deck. For the crew of the Bainbridge, this was not just another pirate incident, but a US-flagged ship, an American captain, and an American
We've got
hostage. As the Bainbridge
Slow to
began to
approach.
approach the area, on the sea surface, there was only a small orange dot rocking back and forth. the lifeboat of the Maersk Alabama. The destroyer slowed down, maintaining a distance of a few hundred meters. On deck, binoculars, scopes, and optical infrared cameras all pointed in one direction. From afar, it looked like a buoy, but everyone knew. Inside that orange box was a hostage and 4 guns. Inside the orange box, a small hell at sea. If looked at from the outside, the lifeboat seemed enclosed and safe. But step inside, and it was like a mobile boiler room. The space was just enough for a few people to sit huddled together. The air was thick with the smell of oil, plastic, sweat, and urine. The windows were just small oval glass panes, with the sun piercing through, making the inside sweltering hot. The ventilation fan was weak, sputtering with the rhythm of the engine. Captain Phillips sat with his hands tied, his back leaning against the wall. Every time the boat bounced, his back slammed against the hard plastic. The pirates took turns keeping watch, exhausted, their eyes red from lack of sleep, but in their hands were still AK-47 seconds fully loaded. They constantly pointed their guns at Phillips, sometimes like a psychological game. One of them smirked, pulling the trigger on an empty chamber, a dry click echoing right next to his ear. Phillips didn't know when that click would turn into a bang, but he understood one thing. The more tired and panicked they were, the easier it was for them to pull the trigger blindly. The Bainbridge approaches. The psychological war begins. When the Bainbridge got close enough, the destroyer's captain ordered the launch of a small, rigid-hull inflatable boat, flying a white flag, carrying communication equipment and a Somali interpreter. The initial goal was not to attack, but to negotiate and stall for time. A voice over the loudspeaker echoed across the water. "This is the United States Navy. We are here to ensure safety. We want to talk." Meanwhile, on the ship's deck, a small team of SEALs had already arrived, a force operating in the area, diverted to the Bainbridge. As the first response team, they quietly observed, noting every habit of the pirates. Who is the one always standing near the door? Who keeps the gun close to Phillips's head? How often do they change shifts? When tired, where do they sit? Where do they sleep? Every small detail would later become the difference between a clean shot and a disaster. Negotiations began. The American side offered familiar lines from the hostage negotiation textbook. "We understand your difficulties. No one wants bloodshed. Release the hostage, and you will be treated fairly." The Somali pirates replied with a chaotic series of demands: ransom, safe passage to shore, wanting to talk to the big boss in America, wanting guarantees against pursuit. Behind those demands was a very real fear. They were afraid of dying nameless in the middle of the ocean, with no money, no fame, leaving behind impoverished families in a war-torn fishing village. But for the US Navy, the goal was much simpler: keep Phillips alive. Keep the lifeboat out of reach of the Somali coast. Attempted escape, Phillips' bold gamble. In that suffocating box, Phillips didn't just sit and wait. He constantly observed, memorizing the rhythm of the 4 pirates. When they argued, when they let their guard down, when they switched the person holding the gun. Once, seizing the moment when all 4 were arguing with the Bainbridge over the radio, guns pointed aside, Phillips sprang up, lunged straight for the door, crashed past them, and jumped into the sea. The cold salt water engulfed his head. For a moment, he only heard the buzzing in his ears and saw the distant lights of the destroyer. He tried to thrash, swimming while hoping the American marksman understood that the person swimming was the hostage, and the shadows on the boat were the targets. On the boat, the pirates panicked. One grabbed a gun, firing blindly into the water, green sparks tearing through the night. Phillips heard bullets whistling overhead. water splashing, then felt rough hands grabbing his collar, jerking him back. They threw him back onto the boat like a fish caught in a net, punching and kicking him madly. From then on, they didn't trust him ever again. The ropes were tighter, the gun barrel was closer, and the nerves of everyone, pirates, hostage, SEALs, commanders, were all ratcheted up another notch. SEAL Team 6 enters the fray. News of the hijacking of the US-flagged ship quickly reached the White House, in a context where the whole world was watching every move of the US. The President and the Department of Defense understood. If this ends with the death of the captain right in front of the US Navy, it is not just a personal tragedy, but a blow to the image of American power. The order was given. Deploy SEAL Team 6, the Navy's most secretive counterterrorism unit, specializing in high-value hostage rescue missions. A DEVGRU team was transported by cargo plane, flying straight halfway around the world, then parachuting at night into the sea, picked up by small boats, and brought to the Bainbridge. When they stepped on deck, there were no fanfares, no welcomes. They only received a brief situation briefing. Hostage 1. Hostiles 4. Armed in an enclosed lifeboat. Fire only when in imminent danger. You may have to fire simultaneously. From that point on, the center of the story was no longer in the FBI office or the negotiation room, but within the scopes of sniper rifles, constraints from Washington, the invisible string on the trigger. From the mainland, secret calls came in. The White House, the Pentagon, the National Security Advisor, all agreed on one thing. Do not let this turn into an execution at sea. There must be clear grounds that the hostage's life is under direct threat. That was rewritten in the rules of engagement. The on-site commander is authorized to order fire if he sees, or is reported, that the hostage is in a state of imminent danger. It sounds flexible, but on the ground, it turned into a massive burden on the shoulders of the USS Bainbridge's captain. If he orders early, and Phillips dies, he will be seen as the one who ordered the hostage killed. If he is too slow, letting the pirates pull the trigger first, he will be the one who dared not act. Meanwhile, the SEALs understood that the chances to shoot were few. Rough seas, small boat, 4 pirates, always moving. They had to understand every habit. Which one stands near the window? Which one sleeps in the left corner? When the boat rocks to the left, where do their heads go in the scope? The crack in the orange boat. And on the orange box, 9-6 hours had worn everyone down. Daytime temperatures were like a furnace. Night was freezing cold. Drinking water began to run out. Body odor, the smell of fear, and the smell of diesel fuel blended into a heavy mixture. The 4 pirates, young men, began to argue about everything. About the direction, about the ransom, about suspicions of cheating each other later. The fragile unity of a makeshift gang began to break. Phillips, in the role of the old American tied in the middle, quietly observed. He understood. When they turn their guns on each other is when I am in even more danger. In a new negotiation effort, the Bainbridge invited Muse, the one seen as the leader, onto the big ship to negotiate directly and guarantee his honor. With plenty of promises and cajoling, Muse agreed to step onto the Bainbridge, leaving the remaining 3 to guard Phillips. At that very moment, the balance of force changed. On the boat, there were now only 3 guns and 1 hostage. Neither the American side nor the pirates knew that this inadvertently created the perfect condition for the 3 bullets later on. The towing tactic, helping while tethering the target. Knowing the boat was heading closer to the Somali coast, the Bainbridge proposed, "Let us tow you to save fuel. We can take you to a safe place to negotiate." The 3 pirates, exhausted and low on fuel, agreed. A rope was rigged from the stern of the Bainbridge to the bow of the lifeboat. From then on, Every time the destroyer changed course, the orange boat turned with it. On the surface, it was a sign of concession, support, reducing tension. But for the SEALs, this had a different meaning. From now on, we control the sway of the boat. We can choose a time when the sea is relatively stable, creating a moment of predictable movement. To pull the trigger. Days passed. Afternoon faded. Then night came again. Each 24-hour cycle was like a loop. Hot, cold, tension, fatigue,
routine holds.
hope,
One at the window, two near the
despair.
hatch.
On the Bainbridge, 3 snipers took
Confirmed
turns,
visual.
scoping the
Movement
boat,
escalating.
memorizing every time a pirate yawned, dropped his head, or switched the gun. They knew that the longer it dragged on, the narrower the negotiation window became. The endurance of the hostage, the pirates, and the political system back home all had limits. The night before the death zone. The final night arrived with an atmosphere completely different from the 3 nights before. The wind shifted. The waves were no longer too big. On the deck of the Bainbridge, SEAL Team 6 was gathered, the commander explaining the rules once more. No one fires without an order. When the order is given, 3 men, 3 rounds,
Please God,
fire
see us through this
simultaneously. We only have one chance. If one survives long enough to squeeze the trigger, all
Are they
efforts will
getting
be
closer?
meaningless. Inside the boat, Phillips was exhausted, eyes sunken, hands numb from the ropes. The 3 pirates were quieter than usual. One sat hugging his gun, eyes dazed. One mumbled prayers. The other stared at the shadow of the big ship, as if trying to guess how many guns inside were pointing at him. On the Black Sea, the tow line stretched taut, straight as a thread connecting a hostage and a nation. Ladies and gentlemen, by this point, every soft option had been tried. Negotiation, promises, stalling, persuasion. The boat still refused to turn back. The pirates still refused to release the man. The U.S. Navy also understood clearly. If that boat touches the Somali coast, everything will step into a new game. Darker, dirtier, and much harder to control. The remaining choice now was either not shoot and accept losing control, or put everything into a single moment where 3 shots must stand for an entire strategy. And in the darkness on the Indian Ocean, as the last waves of the day gently lapped against the ship's hull, 3 SEALs lay behind the steel railing, breathing deep, memorizing the boat's sway, the heartbeat in their chests, and waiting for a very small sign that would decide life or death, success or disaster. That night on the Indian Ocean, everything stood almost still. Not because the sea was calm, the waves still rolled, the wind still blew, and the tow line remained taut, but because everyone present was holding their breath, preparation for the single moment. On the fantail of the USS Bainbridge, 3 figures lay prone behind the steel railing at the stern. They didn't speak, communicating only by hand signals. In front of each man was a sniper rifle, securely mounted on a bipod, scopes zeroed since the afternoon. Each SEAL sniper was assigned a specific target. The first shooter, the pirate sitting on the left, mumbling and hugging his gun. The second, the one often standing near the door, popping his head out to shout. The third, the most volatile one, frequently pressing his AK barrel against Phillips. They called each other by numbers,
Confirm contact
not real
on the
names.
lifeboat.
The internal comms in their earpieces relayed the commander's voice. Repeat mission, 3 targets, 3 rounds, 1 moment. No one fires early, no one fires late.
3 shooters.
If one pirate survives long enough to pull a trigger,
1 moment.
we lose. Deep inside the ship, commanding officers had their eyes glued to thermal cameras, sonar, and most importantly, the hostage's silhouette. They had to ensure that in the second the shots were fired, Phillips was not in the line of fire. obscured, or accidentally stepping into the space between the muzzle and the target. The imminent danger rule. The invisible string on the trigger. From Washington,
Hostage
across
clear
multiple
at this
communication
angle.
channels, one phrase was repeated: imminent danger. Fire only when the hostage is in imminent danger. But at sea,
Reminder.
no one measures
Use lethal force
imminent
only.
in
If
centimeters
hostage is in
or
imminent
seconds.
danger.
The Bainbridge commander, Captain Frank Castellano, understood clearly. If he ordered the shot beforehand, he could be labeled reckless, a man who killed the hostage. If he hesitated and shot after, just one trigger pull from a pirate would shift the entire burden into the question, why didn't you shoot sooner? He stepped out onto the deck, looking down at the orange boat bobbing in the dim light. Through his binoculars, he saw Phillips' sweat-soaked back, saw the skinny black shadows shifting, hands never leaving their AKs. He knew tonight's decision would follow him for his entire career, perhaps for the rest of his life. Inside the orange box, the final nerve. Inside the lifeboat, the heat, the stench, the smell of oil, the sea, and fear blended into something heavily suffocating. Phillips sat with his hands tied, eyes bloodshot from insomnia and the stinging salt spray. The three remaining pirates were exhausted, but that fatigue was exactly what made them dangerous. When humans are tired and desperate, they can no longer calculate. One started babbling. They will kill us. America will kill us. Another shouted back. Shut up. We have the hostage. They need us. The youngest of the three, his hand shaking on his AK, eyes wide and white, looked at Phillips with a mix of hatred, fear, and confusion. He didn't understand why such a massive American ship didn't just charge in but stood watching from afar. That silence made him even more unsettled. Phillips, though terrified, tried to keep his voice steady. Just let me go. This can end peacefully. You are young. You have a life ahead. But those words fell into a wall of panic that thickened by the hour. For three boys from a land where guns and poverty are the two most familiar things, any concept of peacefully was blurred. They only knew, if we don't get money, if we don't reach the shore, the big men in the village will kill us. Gradually, the gun muzzle pointed at Phillips wasn't just leverage for money anymore, but a place to vent all their anger and despair. The activation moment, now or never. On the deck of the Bainbridge, the three SEAL snipers had been in firing position for over an hour. Muscles began to numb, eyes tired, but they were not allowed to move much. Every movement could shift the rifle, throw off the rhythm, lose the feel of the wave's motion. A small beep sounded in their headsets. Command to snipers, be advised. Pirate leader, on board Bainbridge. Lifeboat remaining, 3 targets, 1 hostage, confirm. Sniper team, copy. 3 targets confirmed.
No overlap.
Below, the tow line on the boat tightened as the Bainbridge shifted course slightly, creating a relatively stable position. The waves remained, but the boat's movement was now more predictable.
Reroute auxiliary
Suddenly,
power to the
a
shields.
louder than usual argument erupted from the boat. One pirate yanked
We're
Phillips
losing
by the collar,
containment
pulling him
field
close,
4, Captain.
cursing in Somali, then in broken English. No money, no going shore. You lie. In Castellano's binoculars, the scene was as clear as day. The AK barrel pressed straight into Phillips's back, just centimeters from his heart. From the sniper's angle, through their scopes, they saw the pirate's profile, a part of the neck, and exactly the spot needed to shoot. That was the moment every training manual calls imminent danger. There was no time for a call to ask superiors for an opinion. Castellano spoke a short, decisive sentence over the internal system. Stand by. If you have a clean shot, take it. 3 shots, 3 lives. In the world of snipers, the moment of pulling the trigger is when years of practice condense into one tiny movement. A light squeeze of the fingertip. The three SEALs inhaled deep, exhaled slow, locking their breathing in the same interval. Through the scopes, they no longer saw the sea, no ship, heard no wind, only saw three sweat-drenched faces in the orange cabin. A wave pushed the boat up. The next rhythm brought it down. They were used to that cycle. They waited for the exact midpoint, where motion was almost zero. 3, 2, 1. The count didn't come from their mouths, but echoed in each man's head,
Target left.
in sync.
Target center.
Three fingers
Target
squeezed the
right.
triggers. 3 bullets left the barrels at almost the
Stand
exact
by.
same time. In an
If you
instant,
have a clean
the quiet
shot,
night was torn apart by
take
3
it.
dry, short pops. No flares, no cheering. Only 3 invisible bullet trajectories flying over the water, following the exact path the men on deck had visualized 100 times in their minds. Inside the boat, time seemed to shatter into fragments. The one pressing the gun to Phillips' back suddenly froze, eyes wide, body twitching slightly before slumping to the side. The other 2, each in a corner, fell almost simultaneously. One still gripping his AK tight, finger not yet able to squeeze. Phillips heard the thud of bodies hitting the wall, something clattering on the plastic ceiling, then a long hiss of static on the radio from the Bainbridge. He didn't understand what just happened, only feeling the weight of the gun on his back vanish. In the commander's binoculars, the 3 target heads were no longer moving. An officer shouted, barely able to contain himself. "All 3 pirates down! No visible movement!" The raid. "We have the captain." Immediately after the volley, a SEAL team waiting at the ship's side launched into action. The rubber boat dropped, engines roaring, rushing toward the small rocking orange boat. Phillips was still dazed. He looked around, saw blood on the walls, saw 3 motionless bodies, saw the AK slide out of a
All
hand.
3 hostile
For a few
contacts
seconds,
are down.
his brain tried
No
to find an
movement.
explanation. Did they shoot each other? Or is it? The boat door burst open from the outside. White light beamed straight into his eyes. Huge figures in tactical gear flooded in, rapid-fire English. "Captain Phillips, we're U.S. Navy. Sir, we're here to take you home." A hand pulled him up, cutting the ropes. A life vest was shoved into his hands, then draped over him. Phillips stumbled, partly from numb legs, partly from the mental shock after 96 hours living amidst death. Over the internal radio, a brief sentence was reported back to the Bainbridge and subsequently relayed to the Pentagon and the White House. "We have the captain." There was no heroic music swelling up, no fireworks, only the sound of engines, water lapping against the hull, and the exhale of relief from people who had bet everything on 3 shots in the dark. 3 pirates, 3 Somali boys who brought AKs onto a ship hoping to change their lives, slumped down in a moment they never realized was stepping into the crosshairs of history. Ladies and gentlemen, tactically, it was a perfect shot. 3 rounds, 3 targets, 0 misses, hostage, alive. But the story doesn't end on the deck. It would drag on in courtrooms, in news reports, in debates
You're
about
going home,
heroes,
sir.
criminals, and moral boundaries. Those things
Welcome aboard,
we will
Captain.
discuss in the final part of the story. The aftermath, the sentence for Muse, the hero image of Phillips, and the question, in a world where just a trigger squeeze is enough to divide the line between life and death, who is truly the winner? After those 3 shots in the night, the sea surface gradually returned to its inherent calm and coldness. But for the people on the ship, for the families back home, and for the world watching, everything was only just beginning. The return amidst applause. Captain Richard Phillips was taken by helicopter, then
You're
by
safe
plane,
now, Captain. We're
straight
just
back
gonna
to
run a few
American
checks
soil
and get you
from an
stabilized.
anonymous middle-aged man in the maritime industry. He suddenly became the face of survival. At the airport, people lined up, holding flags, clapping, and embracing him. The press called him the captain who offered to trade his life to save his crew.
Moving to 50
Television
feet.
replayed the moment he stepped down the plane stairs, hugging his wife, tears falling, unsure if they were tears of joy for being alive, or because the past 4 days had truly stolen a part of him. Later, Phillips wrote a book recounting the incident, A Captain's Duty. Pages not just about pirates and guns, but about fear, the feeling of helplessness, and the choice to remain calm when someone points a gun at your head. Hollywood recreated the story into the film Captain Phillips, starring Tom Hanks. The whole world rewatched the Maersk Alabama incident through a cinematic lens, but few could feel the heat, the stench, the true suffocation of that orange lifeboat out there. The man in chains in the courtroom. As for Abduwali Muse, the Somali youth who once climbed the ladder onto the Maersk Alabama with an AK and a dream of changing his life, he had a different journey. From the deck of the USS Bainbridge, he was handcuffed, put on a plane to New York. In an American courtroom, Muse was no longer a pirate on lawless seas, but a defendant, facing the laws of a nation with a full system of courts, prosecutors, and lawyers. The first issue the court had to debate was how old he was. His family said he wasn't yet 18, a minor. Records, medical evidence, and the court's processing claimed he was an adult. Finally, the court declared Muse guilty of multiple charges: piracy, kidnapping, armed assault, hostage-taking. The sentence was read: 33 years and 9 months in federal prison. A young man who once dreamed of bringing money back to his village, upgrading from a rotten boat to a house, now faced the prospect of growing old behind bars in a country halfway around the world from home. For many Americans, that was justice. Touch an American ship, touch an American citizen. This is the price you pay. But in some fishing village along the Somali coast, Muse's family likely viewed that sentence with different eyes. He went looking for ransom, looking for opportunity, and now he is lost forever. From a hijacking to a global warning. After the Maersk Alabama incident, the international maritime industry changed its view on Somali pirates. Warning signs were no longer just background noise. Many ships began hiring private armed guards, installing razor wire, sonic cannons, high-pressure water hoses, and building more fortified safe rooms. On the sea, the number of warships and patrol aircraft from many nations increased. Pirates still existed, but every time they launched a skiff, they knew that somewhere, beyond the horizon, there might very well be a destroyer, a special forces team, or a scope looking at them. For SEAL Team 6, the Phillips operation became a classic case study, a lesson in discipline, patience, and the ability to condense everything into a 3-shot moment. Later, the name SEAL Team 6 would be attached to many other high-profile operations. But that night on the Indian Ocean in 2009 remains one of the first moments showing how America handles one of its hostages on the global stage. Hero, criminal, or victim of the same game. Ladies and gentlemen, looking from afar, this story seems very clear. A brave captain, an elite special force, and a group of reckless, violent pirates. But if we zoom in closer, we see other layers stacked on top of each other. An American man who sailed all his life, just wanting to deliver aid cargo on time, suddenly thrown into the eye of a political military storm. Somali youths born in a collapsed country, no state, no law, growing up with guns and hunger, then fed promises: go rob ships, just scare them, don't kill anyone, and there will be money. The SEAL soldiers, behind the glamour of 3 perfect shots, faced the pressure of being absolutely correct, allowed no errors, while knowing they just ended the lives of 3 young human beings. So, who is the hero? Who is the criminal? Who is the victim? The easiest answer is Phillips is the hero. The SEALs are the rescuers. The pirates are the criminals. But the harder answer, and the question I want to leave with you, is if you were born in a Somali fishing village with no school, no job, nothing but guns and the sea, if one day someone handed you an AK and said, just scare them, no need to kill anyone, there will be lots of money, are you sure you wouldn't step onto that small skiff? Those 3 shots that night saved a captain, saved a nation's honor, and sent a strong deterrent message to pirates worldwide. But at the same time, it closed the lives of 3 young men, locked away another's life behind bars, and reminded us that in places where poverty, war, and lawlessness speak first, gunfire is always the final language. If you've watched this far, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. In your opinion, that night, did SEAL Team 6 do the only thing possible, or was there still a more humane option? And in this story of 3 shots, 3 lives, which character touched you the most? The captain, the SEALs, or the Somali youths on the orange boat? Don't forget to subscribe to the Death Zone channel, because we have many more fateful nights of world military history, where just one decision, one trigger pull, or one wrong step is enough to change the destiny of an entire lifetime.